Works, please.
Mike Burt,
Present.
Sandra Gerlach,
Here.
Monica McHugh,
Present.
Christine Fobb,
Here.
Brian Benema,
Here.
Emerita Keys,
I'm looking for her to join online, but I haven't seen her yet.
Tom Stewart will be delayed.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to look over the minutes of the meeting of May 19th? So I entertain motion to so with the minutes.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Passed. This public hearing, and there are no cases. So I presume there's nothing there. And we'll move on to items from the public. If anybody has anything from the public that anybody wants to bring forth?
Nothing new.
Nothing for you guys, okay? Got anybody online?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the work session. The first part of it will be the zoning ordinance update project from Laura.
Hi, it's nice to be here in person.
Okay,
It's nice to have you in person.
Okay, so I'll work through this, and we'll try to move through it as quickly, but as thoroughly as possible. We do have information for this work session packet posted on the website, so we've been trying to keep these work session packets posted as the meetings come up. We also, would then want to go through the items here. We've got these they're all in red line and clean. If you would prefer to just review a clean version, I'm happy to do that. Or if you want to go through the red line.
You'll need to change
that too.
this work session date to 6/16.
Yeah, I gained 3 days when I figured out it was on the 16th. That's my typo, I think.
It got changed online.
I got changed online, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I must have transposed the 6 and the 9. So one of the questions that came up at our meeting in May was the idea of what are the requirements for meeting notices, for publishing those notices, but also what happens if you adopt Iowa Code by reference? So what I was able to research with Becca and Lori was that our meeting requirements are in compliance. We actually could, if we want to reference Iowa Code, our meeting deadlines would be no less than 4 days, no more than 20 days. And right now we're doing no less than 10, no more than 20. The recommendation is to go ahead and just reference the Iowa Code and continue the practice of shooting for at least a 10-day notification. In case something happens, you do have a little bit of a cushion. So let's publication. Oh, there it is. This comes up sometimes because notices are mailed out to property owners within 500 feet. It's not a requirement under Iowa Code. Most cities and counties do have some type of mailing notification as a courtesy notice. And so we have put this in the ordinance with a note that it is a courtesy notice. If someone doesn't get the notice in the mail, or for some reason the notices aren't mailed out, you're still able to hold your hearing as long as it's been published and posted. Okay. Yeah, I got ahead of myself. This one talks about the time frame. Sorry. The meeting time frame, and I already reviewed that. And then the good news, I think Sandra, this was your question. I learned something. You can actually adopt the Iowa code and you do not have to necessarily keep track of every time the legislature amends every single piece that might be important. So the highlighted sentence there is adopted by reference shall serve as an automatic modification of the whatever ordinance, or whatever part of the code you're referencing in your ordinance. So win there. The rest of it is just some more information about that, but basically we can reference that we've changed references to meet Iowa code. We'll continue the practice of the 10, no more, at least 10, no more than 20, although we do have a little bit of wiggle room there. And we're gonna reference Iowa code as much as possible. And we really can go on to the next one unless there are any questions. This is just a lot of background information if you wanted the details.
I can keep going if you guys are comfortable with that, or if you wanna focus on anything in particular.
Should be kind then.
Great question, Sandra. Thank you.
Well, we all learned something. That's good, right?
Right.
And adopted something that's gonna make life easier going forward when the Iowa code changes, so, yeah.
Okay, so what's our next one? I think we can probably go ahead to the next item then.
Home rule or?
No, I mean to the next. I think it's farm definition is the next work session topic. So there we go. So the other question that came up was the idea of a farm home-based business, which, to be honest, none of us could quite figure out what that meant. So what we did is we went back and took a look at what exactly as the definition for a farm that we had researched early in the process. And our research indicates that a farm home-based occupation is exempt because it's farm related. If it meets the definition of farm, it's exempt, and so we don't need to regulate it. So we're recommending that definition for home occupation, comma, farm, be deleted. We also, in the A1 agricultural district, we're recommending that the home occupation be renamed to home-based business. That's in the Iowa code, and we'll talk about that separately. But there's also a reference for roadside stands. When we look at the definition for farm under Iowa law, a roadside stand is mentioned as an example. So there's no reason to have regulations for something that's exempt. So let's see. So, oh boy, this might be easier to go the clean version one. The one thing I can't read this.
Yeah, I can zoom in if I needed to.
But I
But
think let's just go, okay.
there we go, that's better.
So. Section in chapter 1.20, farms are exempt. We have a lot of language in there. But with Sandra's brilliant question, we now get to just reference the code section, Iowa Code section 335.2. And then reference our definitions in chapter 6. The definitions in chapter 6. There should be a lot of highlights there, I apologize. Farm is defined and regulated in Iowa Code 352.2 and Iowa Code 96.1A and Iowa Administrative Code also has a definition of farm. And so by referring to those, we have a very broad sense of what a farm is. And that I found it to be pretty helpful the way it's written. And I think it will certainly kind of help us frame. If something falls within this definition, we do not regulate it. If it doesn't, then we do. Do we have anything else after this? Oh, these are this is the language in those code sections. So. So I found that all of these to be very helpful. And because we're gonna reference it when they get up, when or if they're ever updated, your definition remains relevant. And I don't, there's really nothing else I need to say. I mean, this is the Iowa code and it provides a really good reference, but we don't need to quote it. We just need to refer to it. And Lori and I've already used this on a couple of things.
We got another one.
Good thing we have all
We-
this.
Yeah, it's one that could be a problem child, so I think we want to visit it.
Yeah, well, we'll do that. But right now, this is where we're recommending is let's go ahead and use that ability to reference the Iowa code and these sections, which we've listed here. That's the Iowa code, so we don't need to put it in our ordinance, but I thought it might be helpful if you could read what it said. Right, as opposed to looking it up. When the code is adopted and put online, then we'll have links to those. People can click and they can go right to that code and they'll see the language. And then whatever year it is, it'll be updated. To be accurate. Okay, this is third time's the charm, I hope. For home-based businesses. We're also looking at home industry here. Home occupation was what is in the what is in the current code, but the Iowa legislature has adopted a section under county zoning that refers to home-based business. And so our recommendation is that we reference that Iowa code chapter. The other thing that your ordinance currently does is it uses chapter 6 definitions to regulate uses. And I think it would be better to not do that, to have a definition in the chapter 6, but to put the regulations in the district. And so that's basically what we're recommending for home occupation, for home industry. And we already talked about farm home occupation. It's farm exempt. So we're just recommending we delete it. So let's go to the next page. So this is the actual Iowa code for a home-based business. And then if we go to the next page. This is a chart we put together that says, okay, let's compare what are regulations now for home occupation and home industry are in our zoning ordinance. So that's the column on the left versus the home-based business information in Iowa code 335.35. So things that are highlighted in yellow are things that are a little bit different. They're not actually in the home-based business definition that's shown on the right, but they also don't contradict it. So using this chart, and I think it goes on to another page, what we're proposing that does, if we could go on to next page.
Do you want to try?
No, fine, you're doing fine.
Okay, because I mean, you could if you wanted.
So basically what we're doing here is this is taking the home-based business and home industry regulations out of chapter 6 definitions and just giving the home-based business and home industry a definition. Really short, and referencing, in the case of the home-based business, it references the Iowa code in section 2.9. The case of the home industry sits as a conditional use, right, that references 2.9, which is supplemental regulations. 4.5 is the conditional use section for the Board of Adjustment. So if we go ahead and go through this, what is it, like, okay, we can start with this. So for purposes of this section, which is regulating a home-based business, we're referencing Iowa code, and we're using this particular phrase in quotes, no impact home-based business, because that's how it shows up in the Iowa code. So it's a little repetitious, but it's kind of helpful if you're trying to explain it. And then we go to the next page. So the home-based business note has a whole set of qualifications in Iowa code in order to be a no impact business. So you've just adopted those. However, one of them is that the home-based business doesn't exceed the county occupancy limit, and most counties don't have one. So what we've done for other communities is we looked at what you already had in terms of number of employees and clients, and it was you don't employ more than one person outside the immediate family on the premises. Okay, there's our occupancy limit. That's what we're currently regulating them at. It's compliant. And so that's what we're recommending there. The information in green font is moved from chapter 6. It's your current information, how you're regulating this. So we've kept it pretty much the same, except for the last one where it talks about produces no offensive noises, vibrations, smoke, dust, odors, etc. That was language that you tagged either here or in other places. It's a little subjective and it's hard to measure. So what we substituted is in red, letter G, is compatible with residential use of the property and surrounding residential use. That's what the Iowa code says. Okay, so again, we're repeating the code, but it seemed like a good idea here. The Iowa code also has a number of businesses that they say you absolutely cannot have as a home-based business. And we had no problem with their list, so we've referenced it. And then we talked together and thought, well, probably another one that we would add would be this, a junkyard, a salvage or recycling operation. We really didn't think that fit the intent of a home-based business that has no impact. No.
Sorry, my eyes are watering, I'm not crying,
Oh, okay.
but we do have one that's out in the middle of nowhere. It sits on a B road.
There's a provision for those to operate as a
That would
conditional
be
use.
conditional use.
Yep, yep,
Okay.
but not as a home-based business
Oh, to rezone as commercial.
or industrial, actually.
Yeah.
So the other thing we have is home industry. So, this one, what we decided to do was, this could be for a home-based business that had more than one person in it. So 2 or more persons that don't live there. Let's let people do that as a conditional use. Call it use the same name, the home industry. So it still goes through the conditional use process with the board. And for purposes of this section for home industry, it would be regulated by the Iowa code for home-based business with a couple of exceptions. One is that we're gonna it's gonna be able to have 2 or more employees. Another is just a little bit of change here. We, in this mix of green, which is the current regulations for home industry, we added letter D about exterior display. That's what we currently have for home occupations. And we would recommend that a home industry still do this. Really, what you're trying to do is have something operate that really isn't seen from anywhere off property. And we thought that should still apply for a home industry. One of the other differences, though, is a home occupation currently cannot be more than 30% of the dwelling unit. We're recommending that a home industry can't have a footprint greater than the floor area of the home. For example, we talked about people might want to build a workshop, have a home industry, have a couple of employees, but we wanted that building to be no bigger than the house. At least that was our recommendation. And so that is kind of an easy way to keep it secondary, keep it, give it a condition that we felt was reasonable. There is an opportunity to ask for a variance for these things. We thought we'd start out with, that's a recommendation. So if the house is 1,000 square feet, the home industry can't occupy anything more than that. Does all that seem reasonable to you all so far?
I just picked up on something I want to question. I know you're
I'm
like,
sorry,
"Bring
bring
it."
any questions?
It wring my neck, I know. Need security to walk me out.
Well, I guess 3 times won't be the job.
So I'm looking at, any proposed home-based business, so the top number 1. Not specifically prohibited by this ordinance or Iowa code that employs 2 or more persons who do not reside in the residence.
Mhm.
I wouldn't mind seeing additional language, 2 or more persons on premise. So, like if I had a business let's say I had
I do
7,
not understand you.
okay, let's say I had 7 photographers working for me. But there was never more than one of them that would come to the home base operation. So I was editing their photos or whatever. I worked for I employed 7 photographers and I did all the editing, but they never worked on premise.
I don't care. That doesn't, what we're saying here is they don't resign. It doesn't say they have to work
Okay,
on site or off site.
but they don't reside either. There's,
Well, good, it doesn't matter. You can have two or more that don't reside. You can have 7 employees.
okay,
that
so
live in
that's
their houses.
excuse me, all right, it's 2 or more, okay. It can be 2 or more, and
So-
that, got it,
So the home occupation
okay,
is allowed by Iowa code as an accessory use. You don't do a permit. But what we have as our current regs is only one person who doesn't live there can be an employee.
okay. Sometimes she has to paint me a picture, you guys.
It's okay. It's confusing. But the idea is we're trying to stay as close to what you currently have and what the Iowa code now requires, because we have people out there who are who have home occupations, and we're gonna assume they comply with the current regulations. And so we're trying to maintain those. And home industry, sort of the same thing, only there wasn't really a lot of information. And we felt we really want this to be a business that is small in scale, both in terms of, because the impact should really not be seen or from anywhere outside the property. It's a residential property. If somebody gets to the point where this is bigger than that, then it should be in a zone that's appropriate for it. Not a residential zone or not an ag zone. If it's not a farm exempt activity, the land use policy is really asking us to make sure there are places properly zoned for business and industry. And so that's why we're trying to craft something that stays close to what you have, but gives what we thought was an opportunity for some to have a small business, a home industry on their property that doesn't impact the residential character of their neighborhood. What's on the next page? Oh. Yeah, okay, we can go back. This one just gets rid of that subjective language. So. Is this making sense to y'all? How we're doing this? Seem reasonable? Okay, great. Yes.
I'm still thinking, but right now,
Yeah, let's go to the clean version, the red and black and. So, okay, so here's what we did. Shoop. Those definitions are now, well, they're now short. All the regulations now are in the section where those regulations live. So the home-based business follows the code, includes your current restrictions, and also lists some prohibitions. Home industry. Can you switch that one a little bit for me? Thanks, Lord. So home industry is really just making a difference in terms of number of employees who don't reside on the premises. And really the idea of the 100. This is no bigger than the size of the home, so a little bit bigger. 30%, you see 30% E, 30% is for home occupation.
Right.
Scoot that down a little bit.
the 30%, I mean, does that include daycares or is that a separate section?
Daycares are gonna have their own
Okay,
regulations.
that's what I couldn't remember. That's why I wanted to ask about the 30%.
They have this whole different scenario because the kids have to come and go.
Yeah.
And so it really doesn't fit to try and shoehorn them into this.
Right, and that's what I couldn't remember. if they had
Yeah,
a separate one or not. That's fine.
Yeah, we went through this a lot in Dubuque. And we know there's a need for daycare here in Jackson County. And so they're in a separate part that I have not written yet. Because it's too hard to put them into this.
Well, that's what I wanted to make sure of, because it wouldn't fit for a daycare, which is technically a home-based business. And I mean, 30% of your house being used for daycare is not feasible, so.
Well, and the daycare licensing or guidelines, if you're not licensed, are totally different.
Mhm.
So it makes sense to us to put them in separate categories, because there's
Yeah.
that whole series of
Mhm.
guidelines and licensing and support networks. There are different species
Okay.
here, yeah. That's a great point, keep in mind, and we are planning to do that,
Okay.
to make them possible outside this. Is this the end then? Of this home-based business? Okay. This is a question that came up during the Board of Adjustments meeting in, was that May? May
Yep.
meeting? They had a person who wanted to do a campground. And the current language is pretty vague. So we did some research and we found there's not a lot of information. Most ordinances at the county or city level don't really regulate campgrounds too much, or they really regulate them. So we're kind of trying to lean towards a little more regulation with a little more clarity, respond to the board's request for some guidance. So what we're looking to do is revise the current definitions in your ordinance for campground and travel trailer to coincide with Iowa code and Iowa administrative code. There was a lot of questions at the Board of Adjustment about different kinds of campgrounds, so we have expanded the types. The big issue was what's a public campground and what's a private or commercial campground, because we use all three words. So trying to be clear, trying to use so many adjectives. And so this definition section that we're gonna look at tries to do that. And then the last one was the conditions for campgrounds in A1 and C1 they're kind of vague. They're not real helpful. And the board wanted some more help on what might the commission feel was appropriate. So if we want to go to the next. Let's see. So these are the definitions that we found in Iowa code for campground, recreational vehicle, travel trailer. Let's see what else is, what's that travel trailer? Can you move that up? Truck camper. Can you move it so we can read the bottom of the page? Sure. Truck camper. Okay. And then let's go to the next page. So, yeah, I'm trying to use wherever we can find a definition in the Iowa code, we use it, because then we're in compliance. So I put together a chart based on what I could find on the internet and what Becca could find on the internet about commercial campgrounds, private campgrounds, and public campgrounds. Well, the good news is public campgrounds are very easy to define. If it's a federal, state, county, or local government, it's a public campground. If it's anything else, it's private or commercial. There really isn't a lot of difference between commercial and private. And so, can you go to the next page? Or thanks. You know what, let's go right to the clean version. I think it'll be a lot easier. Okay, so what we did is the campground definition gets reworded to match or use terms used by Iowa code and Iowa administrative code. The commercial campground, we've tried to write this in very plain English. The commercial campground is the name we're recommending because it's used in the C1. And we refer to commercial uses, we refer to commercial district. So a commercial campground versus a public campground. But then what we're doing is there are other names that pop up for campgrounds, membership campgrounds, personal campgrounds, private campgrounds. I'm trying to relate them all back to that bigger definition of a commercial campground. And then public campground stands there alone. So now we're down to really two major kinds. A private campground is now called a commercial campground throughout the ordinance, and then a public campground. And then the other thing that we found as we researched this is there are different types of development. So there were numerous examples, and what we picked were three. One is, this one at the bottom is a primitive campground. So this is one where typically you're gonna walk in, you're gonna backpack in, you might ride a horse, but there are no facilities. There's nothing there for your comfort or convenience. This is Boundary Waters. So I don't know if anybody's been, I haven't been to Boundary Waters because that's exactly the kind of campground it is, and it's You're just out in the wilderness on your own. Semi-developed campground may still be walk-in, or you might be able to get there. It may have roads. It might have some rudimentary facilities, might have portable or pit toilets, might have fire pits, but not a lot. Then if you go to the next page.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this. Personal, see private. Private,
See commercial.
see commercial.
A personal campground is not a public campground, which
Right.
means it's a private campground.
Right.
And a private campground, you go to the commercial campground and see the definition. Or I would drop
Save it.
personal campground altogether,
Yeah.
because it's, every time when we pull it up, it says private campground.
Okay, so this is commercial.
Yes, right now we use the words private
Right.
and we privately operated and commercial.
Okay,
And the Board of Adjustment said, what's the difference? And the difference is, there isn't a difference.
okay,
But then they said, what's a personal campground? They asked for that.
okay.
But if you don't, if you want to just tell them that's what it is and not have it as a definition, that's fine. I'm just trying to, we were just trying to respond to what we heard them say.
Okay.
It's. I'll tell you, we spent a lot of time on this. And I don't even like to camp. I learned a lot, but I also know why I don't like not camping. Okay, now, when we get down to page 2 at the top, here's a developed campground. This one I might stay at. Cabin. Okay, so this is one where you're going to be able to get there by vehicle. There's facilities, there's amenities. This may be where you can hook up your RV to water and sewer and electric. I mean, this can be all sorts of things beyond that semi-developed and certainly beyond the primitive. These additional definitions are either for camping unit or campsite. Those were because there's some discussion of these in the Iowa code. Tourist camp and youth or summer camp are current uses allowed in your ordinance with no definition. So we've tried to come up with some that fit. Recreational lodge is another use that's allowed. Again, try to create a definition for it. We saw a lot of recreational vehicle RV parks when we were looking for campgrounds. They're kind of, the RV park is kind of a popular type of commercial campground. So we went to Iowa Code, looked up what's a recreational vehicle, what's a recreational vehicle park. And so we've added those. One of the things we also looked at was not only the development type, but what kind of recreation goes on at these different kinds of facilities as a way to minimize their impact on the surrounding environment. So you may have heard of active recreation. This is things usually involving courts or fields or other types of facilities. This type of use has a lot of vehicle trips. It's more intense. And that means it has a potential for greater nuisance to adjacent properties because of noise or light or glare or odor. Commercial recreation, indoor commercial recreation, and outdoor commercial recreation, that's on the next page. These are all part of our definitions of creating general land uses that cover a range of specific listings. So your ordinance may have listed 2 or 3 of the 4 or 5 of the things in either of these, but by using this more general and broad definition, you allow for your ordinance to be more flexible and also to accommodate sports that we aren't even thinking about yet. So it allows you to be flexible as things develop in the future. The other one I wanted to point out to you is passive recreation. So these are activities that you carry out with. You can just leave the site the way it is. You enjoy the scenery, you might have some hiking trails, picnic areas, but these are things that are not gonna alter the landscape very much. They have low vehicle trips. And usually they're non-motorized activities, so they have a lower potential to be a nuisance to the adjacent properties. And then public recreation is. This is another broad general use that was, again, a compilation of many things listed separately in the ordinance, bringing them into a single definition. Travel trailer and truck camper refer to the Iowa code section and also refer back to recreational vehicle. So right now, what we're looking at here is how we're proposing to set this up. So a commercial campground recreational vehicle parks on sites of less than 5 acres. Right now, there's no acreage listed. But in the commercial district of C1 highway commercial, there is a distinction at 5 acres. So we're thinking, okay, let's use that as the cutoff here in A1. If it's more than that, it should be in a commercial district. Trying to keep the parking pretty simple here for these various uses. We decided to split out summer youth camps, tourist camps, indoor commercial, outdoor commercial, because the parking requirements are a little bit different. We're limiting tourist camps on sites of less than 5 acres. We're showing here in A1, because in C1 commercial, they're allowed on sites of 5 acres or more. The recreational lodges, maximum 10 units, that's your current regulation. So that's what the chart would look like in A1. And then C1 highway commercial allows commercial, should say commercial, not commercially, commercial campgrounds, recreational vehicle parks or tourist camps on sites of not less than 5 acres. Pretty simple, parking requirements again. The next section is when we move into section 2.9, the supplemental regulations. Here we're looking at, let's set this at less than 5 acres. Here's what your current regulation says. What measures will be taken to minimize adverse effects of the proposed development might have on the environment? That's letter A under the A1, which wasn't very helpful for the Board of Adjustment, which is why we're here with some suggestions. So some of the things that are typical for a campground are that they provide some incidental services. They provide for sanitation if there's something other than primitive type of campground, and there's some recreational facilities. So after researching a number of these, Beck and I are recommending that this be the number of campsites be no more than 4 acres. We found an example that we have in this picture. This example meets these criteria. We thought, well, there's an existing one, but let's use that as a basis. But I'm not quite ready to.
Oh, sorry. You referenced it, so I
Yeah.
just scrolled.
Yeah, I know, no worries. So one of the things we wanna make sure of is the county engineer is approving the access for this, but we also don't wanna have the traffic go through a residential subdivision. An example of this is Spruce Creek Park has an access road that goes past a subdivision, but it doesn't go through it. It goes past it on a common access road that serves the residential subdivision and also serves the park. Your current regulation in C1 is a setback of 50 feet from a residential district, and we thought, well, let's put that here too. We're recommending again that simple off-street parking. And then compliance with development and sign regulations for the district. And then this last item, number 7, right above the picture. So Becca and I talked about this and we thought, well, this example we have here in the picture is one where the recreational facilities are passive recreation. It's in a scenic area, it's near water. There's some open areas. So this is really much different than the next one. When you're in C1 highway commercial, she wants to scroll down a little more. This is one where, here's a comparison. The C1, this would be your campgrounds, your RV parks or tourist camps. 5 acres or more. And again, what kinds of facilities? Higher density here, 15 per acre is what we found on the ones we researched. They were all about the same. They were at 15 per acre. Again, access is approved by the county engineer and that should not go through or across the subdivision. If there is any kind of service involving water, sewage disposal, drinking water, potable water, whatever it is, the county health department needs to get involved. The current regulation was the campsites can't be within 50 feet of a residential district. Usually that's parking requirements. Letter G, though, the difference here is that in the C1 highway commercial district, we can have both active and passive recreation activities because it's in a commercial district. So the expectation is this is a more intensive use and has more facilities and amenities, like the example of the site plan for offshore shown here. So this is a mix of overnight sites, seasonal sites, cabins. Amenities include restrooms, a pool, a water park, restaurant. It's accessible to vehicles with an interior road system, parking areas. So, I mean, this is quite a lot, but it also was a way for us to relate to something in Jackson County that would show types of things that can be done at a commercial campground in the commercial district. Contrasted with a commercial campground in your A1 agricultural district. So we would sure like to know what you think about this because that's going to drive the staff report that goes to the Board of Adjustment. Any questions? Okay.
There's a private campground off of Centerville.
I don't even know where that one is. I know where Centerville is, but I don't know that one, because I've also scrounged up some other ones that are illegal.
The way I understand it, it's a membership.
As defined by Iowa code.
Okay.
It probably differed.
The Iowa code has information. The Iowa Attorney General's office has a very helpful website on membership campgrounds. Most of the regulations for those are to make sure that people don't get sold a bill of goods, let's say. They're to protect the investor, the member. And they have their own definition, and we were just gonna leave them be what they are.
Yeah, I was in a graduation fair there years ago, but I didn't even know it existed until then, so,
It would still be considered a commercial campground,
yeah.
but there's a whole series of regulations in terms of how that membership structure works.
You can give me that information, Monica, because I'm pretty confident it's not gonna be a permitted one. Just like there's another one real close to the one that's trying to get a permit, that's not permitted. So
I gotta remember where it's at.
if you just want to give me a name, or even I could find it.
I'm not sure.
Okay,
I could probably drive you right there.
got you. Got you. That's all right. We'll just take care of it later, though.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we
just
can
don't-
look into them.
Cause they have a nice lodge there. I mean,
And they may well be in compliance and just not zoned for it.
I'll find it. I'll give it to you. I just,
We
I did not drive when I went there just because I knew I may be intoxicated when I left, so I had a designated driver.
Okay. We can with that one.
Yep, yeah.
We want to move on to the
Yeah.
next item. Let's see what comes after this. Okay, this question of cemetery and burial site came up because there was a request for this, and so Lori and Becca and I looked at Iowa code and so what we're looking at is there is something called the Iowa Cemetery Act. So our recommendation is, let's just reference that Iowa code, and there's definitions in there that work for us. One of the questions that the commission had in the prior meeting was what is this 20 spaces off the right of way on drives or parking areas? Well, it's an arbitrary parking requirement, so yeah, it bears looking at. There are no statewide requirements related to, you have to have certain kind of parking at cemeteries. However, typically what happens is there's parking along or on the roads. There might be pull-offs, there might be a parking lot. And the 20 spaces, where did that come from? It's arbitrary. I have no idea where it came from, nor would I encourage you to use it because it could be too much or too little. So we don't have a lot of these, and we're thinking it's not gonna be something we're gonna get a lot of. So we're recommending, let's be flexible. We'll have a site plan that shows where the roadways will be, any pull-offs or parking areas. That goes to the zoning administrator. They can approve it, and that takes care of the parking. The burial site, we feel could be handled as an accessory use in the A1 district. We're aware that there are farms that include burials for the previous owners of the current family, or whatever it might be. And so that would not be unusual, something that does occur. And it's certainly not the primary use. It's not a cemetery, like it's for more than people who were associated with that farm, for example. So we think that's a good way to accommodate this request by allowing something that's already occurring and not really causing any conflict. You want to go to the next page then? Okay, this is the cemetery law, which we can this has the definitions. Becca and Lori scrutinized these and picked the ones they wanted. If we go to the next page. These are the ones that seemed relevant. These are things that tend to pop up. A burial site, that was the request. A cemetery, that's existing. Columbarium, mausoleum, also pretty common in cemeteries. And then we have our pioneer cemeteries in our county. They have their own commission. and they're also regulated all under this Iowa Cemetery Act. In the A1 district, you can see we talked about this required parking. We agree, it seems kind of arbitrary. So we, again, for both the cemetery or the burial site, parking would be per a site plan. Again, allowing the burial site as an accessory use. So that, let's see what's next. That's it. Seemed like a pretty simple way to solve the problem and be a little more flexible. Clean, yeah. Okay, what's next? Oh, R1, okay.
Was that 15 times? Which one did you revise? Two tags.
Only for-
Okay.
And I'm only at the 13.
15, okay.
So, the R1 district you looked at in April, you had some, there were some questions, and I had some typos in there, so I'm gonna try to correct those. So what we've done is we're using tables as much as possible, principal, accessory, conditional uses, using the matrix of allowed uses to help us out here. And we're showing references to the zoning ordinance and other county ordinance as well as Iowa code. One of the things we had talked about early on was creating a separate district for existing residential areas, subdivisions, in particular that were platted before the county had zoning. We've thought, I think we can maybe put this in R1 for you, then nobody has to go through a rezoning. So we know when the first ordinance was adopted, so there's our date, May 6, 1976. Anything that's platted off record before that, we're trying to create regulations that will accommodate them. One of the things we researched with the commission a year ago or more was the Leisure Lake area. That's kind of a good example of something that was platted before there was zoning. And so what we're trying to do is accommodate historical existing development, land use patterns, so that the administrator can approve things and they don't have to go to the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment is very happy anytime we can keep something off their agenda. So they're in support of this. Do you want to go down to page 2? And this is the information we looked at last time. When we did an analysis of just Leisure Lake, this demonstrates why the current zoning doesn't work for that area. The minimum lot areas with well and septic, or with a community water and sewer, or even for a seasonal resort, there's still a lot of lots that don't comply. So if you want to scoot down a little bit. So what we came up with is a set of regulations for how these lots are developed, depending on where they're at and what kind of service they do or don't have. So the regulations are on the left. The second column is dwellings and LLPOA, that's Leisure Lake Property Owner Association uses. They have some facilities, restrooms and some other types of facilities that are private well and septic. And so there you see the regulations for them based on our, Lori and I, Rebecca, looked at the site. If they're served by community water and sewer, so that third column, the lot size can be smaller and those setbacks can be smaller. Other seasonal dwellings, we're using the 10,000 square foot. That's what's used in A1 for seasonal resort. And so again, the dimensions of those development regulations, they drop down. And then for accessory uses and structures, that's that last column. They don't have a minimum lot area of frontage, And we gave them pretty limited, front, side, rear yard setbacks. So do you wanna go to let's go to the clean version. I think it's a little easier. So R1 is, it's got, you know,
There's a lot of it.
there's a lot of it because it's broken into two types of residential areas. So that's one section or one set of regulations is, okay, you were platted after we had zoning. So these are our regulations. Or you were platted before we had zoning, so we need to give you new regulations because we need to match how your existing development's working. So for the R1 district, we have what we're calling standard, so that applies to the R1 districts that were platted after the first zoning ordinance. And so that's what we're showing in this chapter, or this first table, excuse me, this chapter. Okay, do you wanna?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just rereading something too.
Wait a minute, we've got cemetery, we've got that 20 spaces again.
Yeah. Good catch. Part of this depended on which of these I had finished first. And of course, whether you adopted or not. Change it, that's a good catch. See, the intention is to get all these things organized. Okay, so this is, we'll just keep going over. So now we're into, alternative principal uses and structures planted before that date, and so the uses are listed there and their parking requirements. Same thing we did this with the accessory uses. There's a lot of these trying to accommodate things that are occurring in the various subdivisions. There's the standard list and then there's the accessory uses list. And really trying to, in this area, deal with those subdivisions, particularly Leisure Lake, that occurred before zoning.
Ed Dresslers.
Yeah, like wrestlers. So, keep going. Let's see what's coming up. Okay, so conditional uses, I think these are the ones that were, those are existing. I don't think we added any.
So I have a question on this one.
Uh-huh.
With the conditional uses.
Sure.
Because railroads are private property. So why do we have,
Oh, they shouldn't be. They should be. I think we pulled them out in the other districts.
I was gonna say they should be because they're not public.
Yeah. Well, and what are you gonna do? Tell the railroad they can't come through? They're already there.
And
yeah.
they own the property. I mean, it's not public.
Yeah, we'll move that up to principal uses. I'm sorry, I missed that one. We didn't add any temporary uses or structures, and then let's look at the development regulations. We looked at this before, but this time I think the numbers are correct. So we're starting here with the standard development regulations, so this is pretty much what you have in R1 right now. I don't think we changed anything really. So this is, let's go ahead. We've already looked at this. So now the alternative ones, this time the numbers have been changed to, where are we down? These are, I think we looked at these last time. We'll move railroads out and we'll also change special exception to conditional use. Let's go ahead and look at table 2. So table 2 is let's come up with some alternative development regulation. Do you want to scoot that up so we see if we can get as much in table two as possible? Please. So what we're trying to do is create the regulations that reflect the development that's there, the historical development before there was zoning. And so, these are those setback requirements that we showed you in that transmittal letter in that summary box. With the different colors. And then let's go ahead and scroll down. This second table uses some notes. Which are just off the page, so can you pull them down and look at? Okay, so again, we talked about this at your meeting in April, so there might not be any minimum lot area width unless the county health department says you're gonna need something to provide for adequate sewage disposal facilities. So we're putting that squarely in the health department's domain for them to provide us guidance on what should happen here. One of the other things we talked about at our April meeting was averaging the front and rear yard setbacks. This is something that we used in other communities to again kind of use the existing development. Where are the, thanks, Lauren, where are the buildings located? And let's just come up with an average, something that works for that neighborhood. The special side yard setback, is just another way to have some flexibility. The front setback for off-street parking. I think is kind of shown in the second drawing, so if you want to go ahead and scroll that up. So this first one is the example of an average, how to calculate an average front yard setback. And then the next one under it is what happens with providing enough room for parking. Most vehicles need a 20-foot parking space. 10-foot won't cut it. Generally, so we'll give some examples of how setbacks can still be 10-foot, but the driveway can accommodate a 20-foot parking area. I think that's the end of this one. Oh, we got another driveway. Oh, then this one is just an example of working around that 10-foot setback with different layouts. What does and doesn't work on these particular examples. And then I think we're cool with this. We're going to talk about this as part of something else. Okay. Oh, can't read that now. How are we doing?
Well, I just moved it out so we could, I zoomed in for the graphics.
Yeah.
So I zoomed back out the regular stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. So,
Sorry.
oh, that's okay. So this section we looked at the March meeting. We have added some new language about more than one principal structure on a residential lot. We have more information on the accessory dwelling units now that the code has been adopted. We looked at the solar energy system requirements then, and the references for the wind energy conversion system and a future data processing center ordinance are shown just to kind of get us in place for those.
Or a placeholder.
As a placeholder, thank you. And then again, we'll be doing references and highlighting those. Okay, let's go ahead and go to. Let's see what the red line looks like. How bad is it? Oh, here's what we put in there for you, the information about accessory dwelling units. This is a new section of the Iowa code. But we can go on to the next. And that's just for cities, which won't pertain. So, at the. Is it the March meeting? March meeting, there was a question about visibility at intersections. We had regulations in there and we realized that the county engineer already does this. So we took out regulations and just said, as determined by the county engineer according to their policy. That way we don't end up doing something that doesn't work for them. More than one principal structure on a lot. Okay, so what's come up for Lori and I in the past has been someone who has a house and says, oh, this means I can build another house. Well, not really, but it is not really clear either. So kind of trying to work around being more specific. If you have a lot zoned for single family residential and you have a single family residence on it, you can't build another single family residence on that same lot. On that residential, you coming up with a term of residential lot. It's platted. It's intended for a single family residence that complies with the development regulations. And it's either in the A1 district or the R1 district. Now, however, we have this accessory dwelling unit, which is the new Iowa code that says you can build this accessory dwelling unit on a lot. So we think we have responded to that question of, can I build another house? And the answer is yes, as an accessory dwelling unit in accordance with the state law and the regulations in our ordinance. The other ones are kind of, we can talk and we can look at accessory dwelling unit if that'll help clarify
I
this.
think it should be allowed. How, I don't think I struggle with this one.
Don't go back.
I was gonna go to
Stay-
ADU, sorry.
Stay just where.
Okay.
She got a question on this one.
So I struggle with this one because in my opinion, if you're adding a second home on your property, what should really be the governance, especially in a rural area, is your water and septic. Can it support two residents? Yeah.
And I would argue that if you're gonna build a separate residence, unless it's an accessory dwelling unit as allowed under Iowa code, you should have it on its own lot. So we know it meets the requirements. You see, the language here says more than one principal lot, structure in a lot in any district, no more than one principal structure housing. Principal use may be erected on a single lot, provided the area setback and other requirements of this ordinance shall be met for each structure as though it were on an individual lot. If it's, to me, if you are in a single family residential district, the expectation is a single family residential district will have one house per lot. Now, the Iowa
I
code says,
disagree with that, depending on the size of the lot. And I mean,
I buy,
residential area, if you're not, I mean, if you're in a rural outside of city limits and city requirements, city zoning. And if you have a lot that is big enough to have two houses on it, then you should be able to put two houses on it. But I think the governing factor should be your septic and your well.
okay, And we can write it that way.
I really think that should be the guiding factor of it.
Then do you have to specify the size of the lot?
Well, the lot has to be enough to meet the requirement of the health department.
It would have to meet the requirements to be able to use, either the same septic, depending on your runs. And the well.
I think that should have two qualifications. One is that it can meet vehicular access requirements of the county engineer. And the second is it meets the water and septic requirements of the county health department. I don't think the zoning administrator should be the one that determines it. I think those two departments really need to weigh in on whether that lot is large enough for that second or third or fourth or fifth home. Because this just says more than one, there's no limit. I have enough land and I can put 10 houses up, but the engineer and the health department.
I know,
Should
I
qualify
disagree
that.
with you on that, because if you're gonna build a second, third, fourth home on your property, that second home has got to figure out how to get back there, not the county. They can do an easement. If they sell it off, it's private property. Let's let those people figure it out.
Except
main-
that they don't figure it out.
I
They
don't
don't
think-
end-
Guess what?
Well,
That's
guess
not,
what? When I
that's not our concern.
Sure
That is
it
not-
is.
no,
You
it's
got a
not.
house that no one can access? You
That's
got
not our
some-
concern. I mean, seriously, it's
Yeah.
private land ownership, that's not our concern. Why should we dictate to them what they have to have for a private road that they have to maintain? That is not the zoning board's discretion.
No, it's the county engineers.
No, it's not,
Why not?
because it's not county property. It is a private landowner property. The prevailing factor, I truly should believe, should be the septic and the well. Because we're more concerned there, because that can affect other residents with contamination of the soil.
So are you saying the property lot, it's got a big lot, you can have all sorts of houses on it. All the county would need is to get to the lot, not all the individual houses on the lot.
No, we're saying they should have access.
No, that's what I'm saying, but you're saying all the county would be is to get to that
Right,
one
the
main
front,
lot,
yep, the front of the
and
lot.
not all the little houses on the
Yeah.
lot.
Okay, that's a good example.
I mean, private road
Goes to the lot.
goes to the lot. The county should not be responsible for it, nor the county. If the county wants to dictate it, then the county should provide all of the maintenance and pay to have that road done.
But if you sell off the lots,
That
That's
is,
different.
that is different, and that
Then-
falls under,
then-
no, that falls under real estate law. And you're stupid if you're gonna sell a lot off and not have access to it.
no, you shouldn't buy it.
Yeah, you're stupid about it.
Oh,
Well,
I just saw a lot sale coming, you guys, that I'm like, oh gosh, you're killing me.
I think we've
Yes.
already seen some of those happen.
Oh, well.
So
Like,
here's, my family's involved in one on a sale. The Iowa code allows for private condemnation for an easement. So the county, it is not the county's responsibility. I mean, that's fine. If we want to write it in there, that's fine. Then the county
okay.
must maintain it and put the road in. If it's on private property and if the county thinks that we need to have an access road, then the county needs to pay for it.
Nope, it just became a big campground situation. The interior roads in a campground are not set by the engineer, but the access to the road is. It's Christine's example.
Yeah.
The engineer gets the vehicular access to the campground, but what goes on inside,
So all you need,
it's
to
up to them. So
the
this is the
front,
same
to the
thing.
front, to the front of the first property. So if you've got a square property.
It
which
doesn't
there-
even have to be the front. What you're saying is the vehicular access to that lot. That's what the engineer approves. Anything that goes on interior.
No, no, if you've got one big lot, you're not splitting it off, and you put a house in the back of that lot. All right? It's all one person's property. If the county wants access to that house, then the county needs to pay for it. If
Why would
you've
the
got.
county want access to the property?
That's my point. It's private property. If they build a house back there, they can put their own driveway back to that house. That is not the county's responsibility to maintain or determine how it's gonna go,
We're gonna do the same, right? We're gonna do the same, right?
right? That's not the county's responsibility. That is the private
Well, I'm
landlord's
not, I
responsibility.
agree with that, yeah. It's just-
So I don't think we should dictate that we should have, that the engineer
I
has,
think it's county responsibility to put the driveway in, so responsibility to put the driveway.
exactly.
That's
So
like
why
the
don't,
county
so
to
why,
maintain my lanes.
so why-
They say they're not maintaining, they're not maintaining that driveway.
That's my point. So why do we wanna make sure that the engineer tells them what they have to have for a driveway to the back of that house? We don't.
That's fine.
Right, for me.
And you don't care if they're splitting it off as a separate lot or not?
No, I don't.
Is everyone in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Didn't there used to be a law that you could only split so many, so you're not splitting it off?
They're
you're
not
saying-
splitting it, they're
You're
just
just
building as
building
many
houses.
homes as their land will accommodate at 2 acres per lot or 20,000 square foot per lot. They just go ahead and build their houses.
So we're talking more of a family compound situation.
Not necessarily,
Or friends or
no,
wherever we
no,
want.
no, we're not talking about it have to be that way. They could have those, somebody could buy those houses.
And they can
It's
only
not
have
a
the
family.
one well and the one septic.
You
No,
know.
No, it's not
that
up.
needs to be governed.
No,
That
that's,
needs to be-
that's
what
not
I'm
up to us
talking about.
either.
That needs to be governed because.
That
if
health
you've got-
department.
Because of the health effects and the leaching and things like that. We want the septic in there.
Yeah.
I don't think we want the county engineer dictating to them how to put the roads in unless they're gonna pay, unless the county's gonna pay for it.
But the county can have access to go look at those houses,
Why do they need them?
taxes.
They've got access anyway.
That's what I'm saying, they
the-
can still have.
The
access.
assessor's office has a duty and a responsibility to list real property.
So they can go anywhere.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what we'll add is, instead of what we have in red right there, we'll say. Where it says, shall be map restructured as though it were on an individual lot, subject to, and we'll reference the language we've been using for the county health department for water and septic. Put that in there instead. Okay, that's cool. We can do that. We'll just take that out.
Can't believe this did that.
Okay.
Can you start dictating?
No, why, I mean, they shouldn't really give it, it's a residential lot, it should be one house on a residential lot.
Well, wait a minute.
I mean, that's the state, that's not our decision.
Well, no, but what I'm saying. So different counties have different regulations. What is it? Scott County requires what, 10 acres? For a rural area, some require 5, Dubuque County is 1. If you've got a 5-acre piece. And you wanna build a second home out there. As long as that second home can have septic out there. Then,
And
Yes.
a
I think it'd be-
septic and a well. What's that?
I mean, and if
That's
they always rezone it, because I see all those rezoning stuff in the paper that there's sectioning off with part of the land so that a member of the family can build a house.
that's different. If they're not sectioning off, and they can,
They're making them section now.
well, they can do that because of their lot size.
Well, I don't think most counties don't allow for a second principal use structure on one parcel.
That's,
I think we should,
but apparently the state's allowing.
Well, for the accessory dwelling unit, which that says it has to be what percentage of the main house, doesn't make it be smaller.
Yeah, we can get to that.
Okay.
I think the discussion here is how do you view lots that are platted for single, if it's for a single family residence, whether it's 20,000 square feet or an acre or 2 or 10. Monica's point is, if you have enough area, you can build as many homes as you want, as long as the county health department says you are complying with our well and septic.
Yes. Because that's
Requirements.
gonna be your restriction. You might wanna try and build 10 houses on an acre lot, but guess what? Our county is gonna look at that and say, you can't do that because your septic and your well will not fit in that piece of property. That should be your restriction. Because you could build 30 10-foot by 10-foot huts and call them residential houses. Yeah, those little tiny houses. And guess what? You can have enough space. But your septic is what should dictate it, because if you've got too many people there, that's where your environmental issue is. And that environmental issue is going to affect the neighboring property owners. So I think that's what we need to look at, rather than out in the middle of nowhere, the number of structures.
So those people are never sectioning that off. How do they know what their land is?
But they're not sectioned off.
That's what I'm
They're
saying.
not.
If they're not, how do they know where
They
their
know.
land?
Well, and typically, I'm gonna agree with what Brian said. Typically, it's gonna be like a compound or a commune. I mean, I'm not gonna let Laura build a house on my property unless she's my buddy, you know? Any of you got, I mean, it's typically gonna be my family.
Up and get it.
It's typically, well, your husband's a great potter, so we might have to
We
talk.
might talk, all right.
But you know what I mean? Like Brian said, typically it's gonna be someone you know. We're not gonna have, you know,
Right.
be building a house. We're gonna allow a family member or a really close friend to be building on that lot with us. And typically the ownership's gonna be owned by the underlying lot owner and not,
Those homes could all be short-term rental.
Yeah.
Or long-term.
and the ownership would be,
Ownership is still the same.
Yeah.
Whoever owns the lot, whatever acreage that is, could be done that way.
Then they can split it off in the future if everybody's dead and gone and they wanna
Not really.
Yeah, the trick
try to
becomes,
split it up,
now,
or you have a big mess.
you have to meet the development regulations for the lot area and the setbacks for the buildings from for side or rear yard. And hopefully that was thought about when you figured out you have enough area to put the houses up with the sewer and water. And maybe you do, because that's usually a pretty sizable amount for the septic, and well, there's some separation requirements, area requirements, depending on what system's used.
And that's what I'm getting at. I don't think we should look at the structure. We look at the underlying that has more effect on the neighbors than the structures being there.
Okay. Is everyone okay with it, Monica's suggestion?
Well, until you go to settle that after all the original owners have died.
But that's not our problem.
Well,
Until
and
they-
that's
and
not-
that-
I know, but
well,
until-
it still could be settled. I am gonna sell my 10-acre parcel that has 5 houses on it. Somebody might wanna buy it,
Gotta buy it all.
You gotta buy it all or none, because you can't say,
unless, like Brian said, you start to split them off, and then you've got other things you can
right,
look
that's
at.
what I mean, so it's fine until.
Well,
But that's not our purpose. That's not our concern. That's not part of the zoning.
it doesn't under Monica's scenario, as long as you are meeting the environmental health requirements of this county, you can build the houses. You have sufficient land area to meet the environmental health requirements. And probably a few setbacks around the edges, but You've got access approved by the engineer to the lot, just like anybody does. And that's good. And then, you know, it's an individual's choice on how they use the land,
So if you three have the
meeting the
house,
environmental requirements.
you three have the house on the 10 acres.
Mhm.
And you, Don, and I wanna buy a house, I'm basically buying a house. I'm not really buying land if it's still to
Um,
one owner,
well,
I'm
that's-
buying a house.
structure the contract.
Yeah.
I mean, cause I can't buy the land.
That's supposed to be.
I'm just saying, how would you do that? Because I'm just
We
asking.
could do it as a residential condominium, perhaps.
I would have PUD.
So in Dubuque, the condominiums would be, we would get the little the plat, you probably have too.
There's zero lot. We don't
They're,
have zero.
the footprint of the building is the lot. And
That's
then
what I'm saying.
the
I'm buying
rest is the
house.
owner.
Yep,
Should
I'm buying
of
the house,
the
that's it.
condominium association or something like that. So there's probably ways to do it too, or
Again, that is not the purpose of the zoning board.
That's because the
Yeah.
the person that owns the land is building these houses, may have individual contracts with all these other people, but the guy still owns all the land, and it's on these people, legalities down the road. As long as they're meeting the health and whatever required,
Or
they're getting into their own mess.
the odds are it's only gonna be one or two and it's gonna be for a family member.
I know.
Well, and that's why I think we should put the septic in there, because that is going, if you look, if anybody's put in a septic in the last 5 years, I mean, there are major restrictions on that, on where everything can be. And this is what I'm getting at, is that, yes, we can allow 5 houses, we can, 20 houses. The sanitarian is not going to allow it to happen because there will not be enough property there to put the fields in. So therefore, instead of us saying we're gonna limit it to 5 houses on 1 acre, the sanitarian is gonna be the one that says, nope, you can only put 1 house on this acre because you don't have enough room to put any more septic there.
the other advantage here is that there's no way to request a dimensional variance from the Board of Adjustment. Oh, I want to put 6 houses and
Bingo.
you only say 5. This pushes it into the realm of the environmental health regulations, which are not subject to the Board of Adjustment.
More sense.
They're subject to the Board of Health. So you see where Monica's going with this?
Okay.
And there are ways to transfer the ownership in whole or in part. But I don't think I agree, I don't think we have to worry about that. People are doing this. It should be full disclosure. I own this land, I own these houses. If you wanna buy this property from me, you buy it all, or there's some other way to do it.
Right, I mean,
But
currently.
it currently meets the environmental health
Right, and
regulations.
currently the law says if you sell your rural residence, your septic system has to be inspected within 2 years of the sale. So if you're gonna sell it, septic has to be done, guess what? You might not be able to sell it, or you're gonna have to do some remediation things in order to fix the septic.
Mhm.
So instead of dictating it through the property and saying, nope, you can't do this, you do it through the health. And like Laura said, there's no adjustments.
So like the Board of Adjustment then is, they're free from having to worry about
Right.
that. It's all on the environmental health sanitarian. So is that, everyone's okay with that?
So is the owner going to be responsible for the septics for all of those houses?
You bet.
Or what's that?
Sure.
The individual owner or the owner of the parcel?
Somebody will be, one way or another.
Right, but who
If they
does
wanna
that?
build.
It's,
It would always go back to the underlying property owner.
Doesn't make a difference to us.
Yeah,
and it's not regulated by this department. It's not a zoning issue, it's an environmental health regulation, and frankly, we should not get mixed up with that because there's a whole department that handles it.
And there's no rule saying that if you're splitting your parcel, individual parcels have to be so many acres.
Yes, there.
Oh, yes, there is. Now
Okay, so what-
now you just jumped into zoning.
Okay,
Right,
Monica's is keeping it under the environmental health regulation.
Okay.
You don't have to split it, but you have to make sure the environmental health regulations are met. And continue to be
and
met.
is there a 2 acre, still a 2 acre for Jackson County?
In R1, or excuse me, A1.
There is if you're splitting off a lot.
Okay,
If you're using
And
the
you don't care
environmental
how
health,
many?
it could be 2 acres, it could be 1 acre, it could be 3 acres. I think it depends on what else is around you.
okay,
Where are you placing these different houses on the property? What are the conditions of the soil? What, I mean, environmental health. I don't know those regulations and I'm really trying to not put them in our zoning ordinance because there's a whole series of state and county regs for it.
that's why we shove it off on the environmental health. And we can, I'm
Defer.
serious.
That's why we defer.
She's more diplomatic than you are. But we,
But then-
we follow the state law on one or more
Mhm.
structures. But we put in there the environmental health,
Mhm.
it backs out the zoning and it defers to the environmental health. I
There
mean,
you go.
seriously, I mean, our main concern
No, I like it.
is more
That's
of the
a-
environmental.
Yep.
Because we had that happen when we moved out here. Guess what? We got surprised. We didn't have to have an inspection. And the neighbor turned us in because we didn't realize that our septic was draining into a ditch. So having no money, because we just bought a farm, we had to put in a septic and a leach field. And that gets very expensive.
Mhm. Yes.
So
so that would not be looked at as kind of circumventing that requirement of the 2 acres of sizes and only so many divided on.
Not
so many
necessarily
properties.
because the sewage disposal system, depending on which one it was, might only need an acre. There are certain ones that work a certain way, or it might need more because of the condition of the
type,
soil.
The soil type and
Lay of the
Yeah.
land, who knows? All kinds of things could impact it. But it's in the environmental regulations, not the zoning regulations to make that determination. That's what we're working on here. That if you plat a subdivision out, your lots should meet the R1 regulations that we showed.
Cause you're selling the lots, basically.
Yeah, you could, or you could be building houses that you rent. You don't-
Yeah, but
you-
it's still there,
Yeah,
yeah.
you just
You're-
pick, you just picking and choosing to do something different, yep. So, so we have an option for people to not subdivide, but to add houses. Assuming they can meet the environmental health regulations.
Or we have the option of, what you said, like the rental houses, but you're separating it into lots. Or you can sell the lots to other people and they build their
Yeah.
own houses. So you've got.
Right, or you can use the example Monica's putting forth that you can put these houses up, they can be rental too. We do not say, oh, you're in a rental district. We say, oh, you're in a residential district.
It's just how you structure it.
We can't discriminate between family composition, whether they rent or not, it's irrelevant. Human beings occupy a house, that's it. Whether they rent or buy or own, doesn't matter. The house has to meet environmental health regulations.
That's.
For its well and septic. Are we? Is everyone clear where we're headed here? Still any concerns? Okay, so I think we have consensus in support of your position. Okay, great. All right, what are we doing now?
Well, we were here
Yeah, we
for a
got,
long time.
we got that figured out. And this, I think we're just doing, we're just going, again, referencing Jackson County Secondary Road and Iowa Code to keep us out of it. We can keep. I think that was just to make sure. Oh, I gotta change special exception.
And this goes back to kind of where Monica was before.
Yeah, that's our current ordinance. There's a different data too. Anyway, that's the current regulations there, so. Do we reference the engineer?
I don't,
We better add that to G. We actually, have you had the county engineer look at this?
no,
Let's ask them.
I'm gonna find out the clean, so I can.
Actually, you know what I think we should do? Buildings have access. Shall have access as approved by the county engineer. I think we should shorten it up and take those out. Especially if that's part of what they're already doing, it shouldn't be in our ordinance.
Right.
I didn't really catch that at this. Do you see where I'm heading? I'm suggesting we drop 1 through 4 and just reference that access is determined by either the board of supervisors or the county engineer. As opposed to the zoning administrator. Not even go through all these things. Because they do that anyway. Their driveway permits, there's no reason for us to.
But this doesn't mention, I'm looking for the word easement.
It's in 3.
3. Private access easement, okay, got it.
But that's not up to the zoning administrator either.
No,
Then let's get rid of it.
That's basically Monica's example.
Exactly. We don't need it. It's just like, if you can meet the environmental health, if you can meet the engineer access requirements, we're done. It's not us, it's not the zoning administrator.
but there's access from the road anyway. Via private entrance.
I don't really care what it is.
Right,
I
so
just
it's
don't
not-
want you to have to regulate it.
Nope.
Because if you regulate it, then there's a chance for the Board of Adjustment to be asked to vary it, and that, we don't want that. They're not the county engineers. I'll work on that one. All right. Okay, we already reviewed this parking stuff was what we reviewed in March. I don't think there were any questions on that. Let's go down to is the ADU in this section? Yeah, we reviewed all this last time. And that. And that. And there's the ADU. Okay, so. The. Accessory dwelling unit, once it got adopted, then we made some revisions, so it's sort of like what we did with the home-based business. We're referring to the Iowa code, we're referring to chapter 6 definitions for things that aren't in the Iowa code. We're recommending that a person be allowed to build a maximum of 1 ADU. If you wanted to build more, you can allow that. The Iowa code says you can set up a size limit of no more than 1,000 square feet or no larger than the single family residence already on the lot. So that's what we've suggested here under maximum size. Go to the next one. Development regulations, the ADU should meet the same regulations for single family residence in A1 or R1. In accordance with that Iowa code. So this number 5 residential restriction can come out because we just talked about that. With Monica's information, 5, we can drop 5. The ADU permit application is mentioned in the Iowa code, so we're referencing that. But we're also referencing chapter 3, which is where the zoning permits are. 7 is one that I suggested to this. If someone goes in and builds the accessory unit before they build the single family residence. My thought is you need to plan out where you're gonna put both of those. Ahead of time. You can start and build the ADU first, but you need to make sure you've planned where the single family residence is. And so these requirements for the zoning. In the zoning permit section under chapter 3 will refer to the engineer, refer to the environmental health. Requirements.
Can I go back on something that we didn't touch? And Becca, you're gonna know why I'm going here as soon as we get here. Flag lots is defined shall be permitted in any district. This is also being addressed in our subdivision ordinance. It mentions flag lots in that.
Do you want to just reference the? Do you want to just say see subdivision ordinance?
What do you think, Becca? I would think, because right now we, there's gonna be some changes to that subdivision ordinance. And I'm looking at 60 feet width going for that flag lot going, oh my gosh, that's huge. But anyway,
So we would, I think there might be 2 choices. One is you leave the word flag lot, the words flag lots. And then as defined and regulated in the subdivision regulations, or you take them out altogether.
I'd say reference.
Reference.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a flag lot.
It's,
It's a lot that will have a long skinny flagpole, which is oftentimes the driveway to the lot, which is then like 2 acres. So it's, you can draw it out.
yeah,
Wow.
I would.
Is this something?
Yeah, I don't get it.
okay, this is a simplified one. So you have lot 1 coming off the road, and they got their little driveway here, and then you have lot 2.
Oh, okay.
So they're basically going behind the lot.
Oh,
Another
I get it.
example of
Okay.
a flag lot is,
Okay. I
uh,
gotcha.
like,
Let me see.
like that,
This is what pictures out.
uh-huh, this is lot 1.
I think we
2,
probably have a picture of the definition section.
So they have flag coming in between.
Yeah.
It looks like a flag, their driveway or their
Right.
access, their easement or whatever.
Right.
It's usually
So
what it
these are
is,
two
yeah.
different property owners or lots.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
this is their access. They're not using an easement. They're using that long skinny driveway.
Yeah, I've seen that in town with like the little address thing pointing.
Yep.
All the way
There you
back.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
Well, now it has a name, doesn't it?
Yeah.
lot 1 and
I was
lot
thinking-
2.
I was like, you have a flag and you need 60 feet.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway.
It's a big flag.
No kidding.
The camping world one, that's
Yeah.
probably trying to get them to take down.
Yeah, zoning administrators spend most of their career looking at things from this, this direction, so we see all these shapes that when you drive by, you don't see them.
And mine comes back to the appraisal world. So,
Yeah, okay, good catch,
all right,
thank you.
thank you.
All right, so let's see, oh, so this is right now, what we've done with the ADU is we've set up the regulations to be consistent with the Iowa code, but they're also pretty tight. The way it's recommended here, you can only do 1. It can't be any larger than the single family residence or 1,000 square feet.
We currently have these rules right now.
We currently can't do this. there's not a way to build an accessory dwelling unit. Now, Monica just talked about building a second unit.
So say for instance, you had a 2 acre lot. You had one whole building behind it, you want to put another. Well, these rules, you're saying we couldn't do the third. Is that right?
Maybe we should look at, instead of developmental regulations, maybe we should look at the environmental health regulations. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Brian, but I'm trying to work my way there. So,
I was
Max?
say if you,
Adding it.
I got my house and I think, all right, I've got a detached garage. Well, I'm gonna put up a barn for my horses over here. That'd be 2 accessory dwelling units, right?
No, those are
Oh.
accessory buildings.
I'm sorry.
The accessory
Yeah.
dwelling is a second house, like your
But-
granny pads.
Or-
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
So in this example, we have a attached. So we build an attachment onto the single family home, that's the accessory dwelling unit,
That's where the dwelling part comes in.
So is
correct?
that just like if you put an addition on your own house? Or is that somebody else's, that's attached, but it's separate and somebody else is living in there?
You can put an addition on your house and then someone else can live there.
Oh, okay, so it doesn't cover just putting an addition on your house and you're still living in the house and that's a new part of the house.
No, that would be an addition, and as long as you meet your setbacks, fine.
Okay.
This says, now, if you wanna do that, and then. So, yeah, so this lets you build, sometimes they're called granny flats. Or, I don't know, ADUs, what we're using. The second example under Iowa code is, a detached ADU. So this could be over your garage that's detached, you build an ADU over it, or that whole little building is a house. The other thing that we, think would be logical is to let you build an internal one. An example would be your basement gets converted to a secondary accessory dwelling unit. It's no bigger than your house because it's in the basement or it's in the attic and it's internal. The law doesn't really talk about that example, but it seems like it would make sense as long as you met environmental health regulations. So we kept this pretty tight. But if you wanted to be more, a little, not quite as tight as we've recommended, we're open to that. Do you wanna, can you?
So why would we allow them to build the ADU before their primary home? But they may never build it.
Because the law says they can.
I don't understand why. Quick and cheap, you want to get that done
Yeah,
while you build your big house.
that's what, Ernie,
Yep.
that's
Right.
what.
Yep,
Dean's
you
right
build a
there.
small one and then live in it till you build the other
Like, they
one.
built some little thing.
Well, I understand, yeah, I understand,
And then
but,
built a house.
you know, nowadays, they may never build.
And that's okay. Plans change, finances change. They decide they really love a teeny house and they don't wanna build the big one, doesn't matter. It's still, even though they built it as an accessory, until that other residence is there, it still qualifies as a single family residence. In many
Okay,
respects.
So we're not talking about, okay, I was a living residence, not technically like a garage or shop, or, okay, so this just has to do with living quarters for humans.
Yes, I think what happened is people were trying to do this and the regulations weren't there, and so they got the code change that allows them. Under basically the same kind of regulations as a single family home, maybe a little bit less, but not more restrictive.
Okay, appraiser brain here. So this is tell me if we're doing this, attached ADU,
Mhm.
this is telling me there's no access from the principal dwelling into this, correct?
I have no idea.
Because
I'm not, this is,
there's
That's-
nothing in the definition, is there, that would say that it doesn't have its own access?
Why do we care?
it doesn't,
Because to me, cause to
It-
me, I wouldn't be looking at it as an ADU.
I'd be looking at it as an addition if you
It'd
had
be-
access.
Yeah. It's just like I've been into homes.
I'll tell you what. The language in the ADU has all kinds of stuff in it. You'd have to read through it because I don't have assessor brain. I don't know if it's assessor related stuff or not,
Yeah,
but you should look through it and see what you think.
I should because
Basically, they don't want to have it regulated very much.
well, to me, they're over regulating on some of that, if that's the case. But yeah, I'm gonna.
Well, third
Yeah.
time will be the charm on this then. We'll come back with another version here because the county must adopt an ordinance to allow these.
Yes,
So we were trying to keep it as close to the law as possible without being all over the place, but the law is all over the place with a bunch of stuff that really only matters in cities. So. What, is there anything after this? Okay, the solar energy stuff we looked at last time. The wind energy.
and those are just definitions, not rules. Yes,
There are definitions that apply to, so you know what you're talking about, solar energy. Sometimes it's easier to put them right there with the regulations. And those were the regulations we looked at last time. There were any questions on those. Wind energy just refers to the ordinance. Keep going. And data processing refers as kind of a placeholder, some future
Okay.
ordinance. So. Where are you going?
I'm just looking at this because we don't have an ordinance yet on solar.
Yeah, that's why we looked at it before. This is everything except utility scale.
Okay,
So you go down a little bit further. Go down a little bit further. So. Specific provisions for utility scale solar energy generation reserved.
got it.
You don't have an ordinance for it at
Okay.
this point.
All right, this is
This
just
is just.
the residential.
Yeah,
Got
and
it.
Yeah, and the. It's not utility scale.
Just because I saw this and going, ooh, but yeah, that's not utility either. That's single use for that, just that specific.
Right. Well, and we have them at farms and they're on the roof or they're on the building or they're on the ground, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It's not a utility scale. They're using it for their property. So this is really just setting up regulations for the ones on people's roofs or in their yards. So building mounted or freestanding that are not utility scale.
Got it.
All their consumer scale. So is everyone okay with that? Okay. I think that's the end of that chapter.
We, possibly call it a night.
Yeah, but before you do that, I wanna, draw your attention to this chart. Which I apologize, I just finished it today. What it was is to try to give you a visual of what we have done in terms of initial drafts, revised drafts, and final drafts. So the column all the way over here on the right is what I have in a final draft form. And it's really, it's chapter 1, general provisions. Chapter 3, admin enforcement, chapter 4, board of adjustment, chapter 5, zoning commission. Where all the action is still occurring is chapter 2, which also relates back to chapter 6. And chapter 2 is the one that's full of all the districts, all the supplemental regs, and all these additional regulations we just talked about. That being said, there are two ways, well, I have two options, there might be more. One option is that we take the next month to review what we didn't get to tonight and what we still need to get to at your June meeting and not schedule a public hearing in June, which was our original schedule.
I mean, July.
And then, wait, what?
June right now.
Correct, July, yeah, I am, yeah, exactly, not schedule the hearing in July like we planned. Use the July meeting to get through the regulations of the districts, some of which, some regulations you've seen and some you really haven't. Yeah, there's a couple that you really haven't. And then set the hearing in August. The other option is to try to do it all in July, which I don't think is gonna work. I don't really think it's fair to you, and I don't think it's fair to the public.
Yeah, we're not gonna get it all done in July. Man,
So I think trying to get
I
it.
can get past this chapter.
This chapter two is a lot of information.
Yeah,
It's a lot of interrelated moving parts. So I think what I'm hearing is you're okay if we take next month to continue to work through the ordinance. Get it the way you want it, and then look at a hearing in July. In
August.
or August, shoot, I can't get off that, I'm sorry. Take the July meeting to work through it. And if you're done, then set your hearing in August. Okay.
I'm good with that. Everybody else?
And I do wanna just, as a reminder, because Laura was polite enough not to mention it. Our contract with her ends in August,
Well.
and we'd be looking at extending,
It's the deadline.
we're running up against it.
The other thing that happens is Lori will be retired
No,
gleefully.
she's not, she's.
What?
There was an
Did you
extended.
change your?
Oh, heck no.
So,
Oops.
Lori will
Be
be.
nice.
When does this
Replacements.
She already said if you see her at a meeting, tell her to go home, so she's not planning to come. But I feel very confident that Becca and I have a good understanding of where Lori's coming from. She's still gonna be helping us through the July meeting. And the timeframe after that, so that we can get ready for August. So I feel like the two of us can handle that. Because we still have some time with Lori, and we're gonna have another meeting with you to go over it. The remaining information in a work session, which is the best way to do it.
Smile back and you got this.
Even though truthfully, Becca and I only have like 14 more work days together between now and August 1st, between the time she's taken off and I'm taking off.
Sounded way better before you said that.
Yeah, I know.
Smile, Laura.
It's like, okay, I'm the buzzkill here, so.
So
Don't you have any vacation plan? Get rid of it?
I do have vacation in July. The day I come back is your hearing in July.
Well, no
No, the
hearing,
day after.
no hearing, just a meeting.
Just a work session, that's right. Okay, so that's what, and we'll work out the contract stuff. Our focus here is to get the job done for you,
Yeah,
not to say, oh, it's all right, done, that's fine.
No, I knew that wouldn't happen. It's like,
Yeah,
here's an addition to our
CI
contract.
wants to make sure you have what you.
Yep.
So, okay, then that's what we'll do.
Do you have anything else that needs to be done?
Thank you.
Well, we won't get to the data mining.
Not this year, probably.
You guys, I'm gonna have to take that back to the, I think I had that set up to where we were gonna be done with this end July. I think that's where our moratorium went, you guys.
Probably next year.
So I'm gonna have to take this back to the. Do you want me to take this back to the Board of Supervisors and ask for an extension to the moratorium on data mining?
Yes.
Yeah.
Consensus says yes, okay.
I wouldn't ask them, just tell them. Give you extension.
What are they gonna do, fire me?
You're gonna,
No.
you're gonna fire us.
I will ask them or request them.
See, she's more diplomatic than you are.
We're kind of doing their job great.
Okay. Mhm. All right, well, I'm glad we ended on a cheerful
Okay.
note.
And just so you know, the solar ordinance too is, we gave that a December 31st date. Solar.
Oh, solar, we just finished it here.
Utility scale.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Utility scale solar and battery energy storage was all moratorium until December 31st.
That's gonna be about like the wind.
My stack for, that's for an extension of that one.
Well, how about I let that one ride and we'll move data
You're just
mining.
passing it on to the next person.
We'll do data mining on December 31st also, yes? Because you'll be done with this in August.
You know, do you know how long the wind took?
Yes, oh, you don't have to tell me.
Same one, I solar.
Well, the difference with solar and wind is we are a solar state. And there's certain things within the state and also with the comprehensive plan, the way it was written, we are a solar friendly county. You wrote the comprehensive plan, not me. Oh, okay. But that does talk about solar energy and,
And
being
that's,
that kind of
that's
friend-
why the regulations in here were pretty easy to do because,
Yeah.
because they're consumer scale,
Yeah.
there's support for that. The utility scale is,
That's
that's a different ballgame, but I mean, this, I'm happy that we can get some solar in for the consumer here. But the utility scale is just like wind. When,
But-
once you get up to that level, it's different. But-
even though I will have some, okay, I might come to a meeting.
Sorry, we're just, sorry. We're not taking public input from prior zoning administrators.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks, everyone, I
Motion-
appreciate it.
Ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second the next meeting.
July 20th,
That's like
well,
start.
21st. July 21st is a Monday.
I probably won't be here. That would be the start of fair.
Oh, okay. Yeah, July,
21st, yeah.
yeah,
So unless you can move it to week ahead or that's not enough.
we wouldn't have
I
enough,
won't be available.
and
And we
true.
I'll be out of state.
And one of us won't, but between Beck and I, one of us
You wanna
won't be
move it to
here.
the 28th?
Uh,
That's the following Monday.
the-
Oh, wait, that's your board of adjustment.
We have a board of adjustment meeting, we can't do that. And we have 2
Okay.
cases on that.
Be here.
And I can't.
As long, we're getting down to the nitty gritty, I would. You know, I understand that you can't be here. Anyone that can be here, we're making some, you guys rather, are making some really important decisions right now. And, at least having 5 people here is really, I think, gonna be important, even though quorum's only 4. There's some important things you guys will be discussing, in July and with the public hearing in August. Tentatively.
What's the dates of the fair? I can't remember.
What really starts on Sunday, the 20th,
Goes all the way through to
the
the
next Sunday.
next Sunday. Okay. Yeah, and the 28th would not
And
work
clean
as
up
a
is
Investors
still
and Board of
that next
Adjustment
Sunday.
meeting. So you'd have to move it to the 29th or 30th? I don't know.
No, that won't, it doesn't make any, I won't be here then either, so. it's-
Oh, well, alrighty then.
Yep.
And probably do,
And I might be able to call.
Okay, that'd be good.
And, you
That
know,
would work.
if I could listen to some of it or something.
Yeah, Zoom in or Zoom in.
Everyone's got-
So, get motion in a second.
Yes, we did.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay. Motion carried.
All right. Good job, commissioners.